Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Patton. I work here in the admissions office at Colby-Sawyer College. I'm joined by our professor, Nick Baer, who teaches here with a whole plethora of classes on our campus. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Nick first and let him give himself an introduction and talk about his role here on campus.
Sure. Thanks so much, Ryan. Hi, all. Nick Baer. I am the program coordinator for the biology program here at Colby-Sawyer. I teach both in the biology program and in the environmental science program here. And today I can give you an overview of the program, and then I'm happy to field any questions you have. So I talk to a lot of students who are trying to figure out what the right fit is for them at different institutions. I hope today I can at least explain what we do here, what I think we do really well here. And at the end of the day, you got to find what I always tell everybody is you got to find a place that feels comfortable for you and seems like a good fit. For biology, I'm going to make a strong argument, and Ryan may get grumpy with me on this a little bit. I would say you can get a great biology education almost anywhere. And I really do believe that no matter where you go to college, it's what you put into it. And I would say that from the start, no matter what. Okay. And that's whether it's Colby-Sawyer or some other place that where your heart connects to. But, I think what we want here is people who feel like this is a good fit for them as an institution. And then I think we really try to make students shine here. And I can spend a lot of time talking about opportunities that we have in our program. But I don't know if that's a good enough overview, Ryan, or you want a little more detail. I'm happy to go into more depth at this point, whatever you want.
I think that's great. And I think maybe what we could do to kind of like meet a little bit of both of those worlds is the first question I know that I'd like to cover is what would you say a typical day in the life of a student, whether they're a first year student, sophomore, junior, senior, but what does that look like, whether they're biology, environmental science, environmental studies, they're going through Ivy, what does that look like for them?
Yeah, all right. So Ryan alludes to the Ivy, the Curtis L. Ivy Science Center. So the Ivy building, that's what we call our home here, is all the sciences are housed here. So that includes chemistry, physics, biology, environmental science, and actually mathematics as well. And so we're all housed, all the faculty are housed in this one building. All the lab classes are in this building. I say for the most part, there are a couple nursing labs in other parts of the campus, but all the biology and environmental science labs are in this building. And so when students come in, we have everything from a lab dedicated to geographic information systems or GIS mapping. So environmental science students would do this really cool layering of information in a visual maps to try to understand landscape questions. What's the influence of impervious surface or development on water quality? You can ask a million questions, forest dynamics, looking at forest types and topography, migration patterns and corridors. I mean, you can ask all sorts of really funky questions using mapping. So there's a lab here set up for that. If you went upstairs, there's the cell molecular, or what I call the skin in science classes. So upstairs, we've got cell molecular labs, we've got anatomy physiology lab, and we've got our chemistry lab, and we've got, my lab, the ecology lab. So I get to play with students. We spend some time in the lab, but a lot of time out in the field. And so we have labs for doing wet chemistry. We have labs for doing molecular science, really cool molecular DNA research. And, students are going from class to class. Your first year as a first year student, you would be taking introductory, either chemical and cellular basis of life, intro bio and intro chemistry. As a sophomore, you'd be taking like evolution and genetics courses along with chemistry. And if you did chemistry your first year, in your inorganic chemistry, by your second year in sophomore year, you'd be taking organic chemistry classes. Your junior year, you might be in a biochemistry class, and then you're starting to pick and choose what gets you excited about science, right? So maybe you're the molecular science and you're doing cell biology or immunology or virology, or advanced microbiology. If you're a skin out kind of person interested in sort of how organisms interact with their environment, maybe you're doing conservation biology. aquatic ecology, terrestrial ecology, or you're really into physiology, checking out comparative physiology, animal physiology classes. I would say half of our students coming in are pre-med and half are pre-vet. And then we've got some who just like science. They're like me, science geek, right? So we just like it. And so we have tracks or concentration. So pre-med folks, we make sure you have your pre-med requirements so that you're successful applying to medical school. For veterinary science, we do the same thing. We make sure you have your veterinary science prereqs. We have advisors that help work with you on that. But there's so much you can do in science. And that's the one thing I would say to folks who are thinking about getting into science. I think, when I'm going to put myself in your shoes, when I was in your shoes, my parents said, you will be a doctor. And I went off to be a biology major and a chemistry minor, right? But as I took my undergraduate, I really fell in love with other parts of science. And I had faculty who kind of facilitated and mentored me. And so I really fell in love with the ecology and how organisms interact with their environment. And that's really where I found, my calling and what I really enjoyed doing. And when I went to graduate school, that's really what I focused on, mostly on water chemistry and how it affected organisms. But, I didn't know that as an undergrad. I didn't know that until really at the end of my undergraduate. So, I think it's okay to not be sure what you like about science, but to come to some institution, some college, right, and dabble in science, and then you start finding what you're good at and what excites you. And so whether you're a first year, second year, third year, you're all doing science at different levels. The seniors who are here, so I guess I talked about everybody but the seniors, by senior year, you've done an internship in something that got you excited. You're doing your senior capstone research project where you're working with a faculty mentor who's you're working on your own research project to kind of showcase your abilities in biology, right? And it's a great thing to talk about when you finish, whether you're going on to graduate school or professional school or a job. So that's sort of what I'd say a day in a life. I don't know if that's a great description, but this building does a lot of science and it runs the gamut, right? And so students are in here asking questions, applying their skills to research projects or applied projects. Faculty also have projects they're working on that students get involved in. So we have students working on research projects. I have a project, since you're asking me, I'm going to tell you, but we have a faculty member who has a research project looking at new antibiotics, trying to find new and novel antibiotics to help fight bacteria, because our antibiotics there are bacteria that are becoming resistant. So we need new science. And he's published some great papers with students, had students do great research, and now they're off in graduate school doing amazing things. So, there are opportunities. There's another faculty here looking at cancer cell research and trying to understand, how cancer cells respond to different treatments, and that might move us forward in that realm. I look at a variety of projects. I have a project on heavy metals, arsenic in well water. So there's roughly 50-60% of people in New Hampshire are on well water, not municipal water. If you're on municipal water, that water is tested and has to meet certain EPA environmental protection guidelines for safe drinking water. But if you're on a well, the only person who's testing that is you as a homeowner. So if you grow up on a well, we're encouraging people to test their well water to look for natural contaminants. We're in a state that has high arsenic levels in certain areas. So we had a citizen science project that my students did where they collected samples from all over and we analyzed them for 14 different elements, some of concern, some not, but we were curious about the water chemistry. And then we communicated that with the people to tell them, oh, hey, your arsenic level is a little high. Here's what you can do to address that concern. And that's a project that's collaborating with people from Dartmouth, people from Maine, and that project spans Maine and New Hampshire. And so it's a really cool piece for students to get involved in. I'm just babbling, but I've got another project since you asked. Another project where I work with students, and I've been for 25 years. I go and I actually, every fall, I band migratory birds of prey, so hawks and eagles, and we lure them in, trap them. All the data is collected for a national database. So we take all sorts of measurements from them. We put a unique bracelet on their leg, so they can be identified if they're ever trapped again. So we can learn how long they live. We can learn how far they migrate. And then Nick, that would be me, I take samples from them. And my students here, we analyze them for Eastern equine encephalitis and West Nile virus, two diseases that actually have a human concern, but they are transferred with migratory birds. So we're trying to understand what's the incidence of these birds moving great distances that may be carrying diseases to new places. We get students, I mean, that's my quick version of, there's a lot of projects to be involved in, and faculty have a bunch of interests. So that's another thing students do in a day in the life here. That is a long answer.
That's okay. That was incredible. As I'm looking at my list of questions, honestly, I think you've touched on like multiple points for each of those questions. So this is
Okay, well,
great.
sorry, I
I
got
no,
carried away.
that's okay. This is fantastic. The one thing I think that maybe we could add on to that as part of the conversation, if you're all right with it, I think you've talked a lot about the different types of experiences, research opportunities, and resources both in the lab, in a classroom setting, also outside the classroom. One thing I think that's unique to our students here, if they come to campus, is the fact that we participate in a National Science Foundation program with Emerge. Could you talk a little bit about Emerge and the opportunity that gives to students if they're a part of that program?
Sure. Yeah, and actually, I'm going to talk about two programs then, because
Definitely.
you're asking about two. So we've got some bigger grants that the college is awarded, right? So we all apply for some funds, and the college has received from faculty who have applied for these things two big grants. One is this Emerge grant, which is basically for underrepresented students in STEM fields. So we're trying to encourage people to come into science, learn about science, get involved in it, and it has financial support for those students and builds a cohort moving through our science program with a lot of really nice support and opportunities for those students. And that's really for underserved students in science. And so, the curriculum is no different for them, but there are opportunities for them, both financially, but then also as a cohort, we have things that we build in to see those students successful in science. The other grant I would talk about is something called INBRI. So the National Institute of Health has a grant that we've been awarded, which partners Colby-Sawyer College as a teaching college with research institutions like Dartmouth, UNH, in New Hampshire. And what that allows us to do, and I've been involved in it, and so have a bunch of the faculty here at Colby-Sawyer, we have a research project, but we're partnered with folks up at another institution, and our students have an opportunity to work with us and in a research lab with really nice equipment at some of these other institutions. And so we can do more on our project than we would normally do. And it gives us a bigger science family. And so I'm working, I've worked with Celia Chen, who's a heavy metal expert up in Dartmouth. And so we were looking at mercury and how it moves through the food web from the water to the invertebrates to fish and ultimately to humans or to top predators like eagles and things like this. And the idea being that metals can accumulate in our tissue and accumulate in concentration. So they're in really low concentrations, lower in the water concentrations or in the smaller organisms. By the time they get to these people like us or top predators, they're actually accumulating where we see a harmful effect. And so we were trying to understand that, how it's moving. And New England in general, because of our climatic patterns and how mercury moves in the environment, tends to be a hotspot for mercury. So we did a study, but my students worked with me in the summer. We did lots of research. Then they went up to Dartmouth and worked in Celia's lab, and she has very special equipment to be a trace element clean lab, so it doesn't get, the samples don't get contaminated. And then they learned to process the samples on the equipment there, and then we published a paper together. So it was really a cool experience for myself, but also for this, really for the students. That INBRI grant, I should say, we also have students who are part of that grant who, in the summer, there's a competitive research opportunity at Dartmouth. And our students have, because we're partnered with them, we have a very good track record of having our students go on to participate in that program. And in fact, I just talked to a student today, Meredith, who's going to be going this summer to Embry. They give you a salary for the summer. They give you intensive research opportunities in a lab. You have GRE preparatory. It's a graduate preparatory program basically, and to get you excited about doing science. And you're working with, state-of-the-art labs, and it's a really cool opportunity. So those students, and we've had many over the years. We've had Embry grants since 2010, and we have had more students in the last 8 years go on to really competitive graduate programs, go on to medical school, go on to vet school. And it's just been a really nice trajectory having those opportunities for our students. And I guess what I would say in general to all of you who are thinking about this is, I started my conversation saying you can get a great biology degree almost anywhere, right? And I do believe that's true. And what I want to do is say, however, and the however is, in the 4 years that you're going to be at college, it's not just about getting a good education. It's about building the whole person, okay? And I really believe that we try really hard to work with students to not just engage them in classes, get them learning cool stuff and thinking about science, but to think about what other opportunities, like students have to do an internship opportunity. What are you going to do that's going to build your resume and give you an idea of, maybe this is a really cool field I hadn't thought about, or it wasn't what I care for. Let me do another experience and see if that's what I want to do. How do you start building the things in science that give you an idea, this is what I want to do, and I want to put things and have experiences that then make me more marketable when I finish. And I really think, there's leadership opportunities on campus. We're a small school, so it's I'd say easier than at big institutions to take on leadership opportunities, engage with faculty on a research project. And those things really will help you stand out when you're going on after college, whatever that is, whether it's a job, graduate school, or a professional program. So those are my thoughts sort of on research experiences and some of these grants we have that give opportunities to students.
That's incredible. And I think one element of that I'm really picking up on that I think is important to kind of take a look at too is it sounds incredibly personal, and the importance and the emphasis put on those personal connections between the student and their faculty member. And it sounds like with our programs, it's certainly not going to be an instance where you're just a face in the crowd of a large lecture and then a larger lab. It sounds like it's something where they're really going to know who you are, your research opportunities. You can be almost like going beyond that role of an academic advisor, become a mentor for them. Could you talk a little about what that relationship between the faculty and the student looks like, whether it's from the perspective of you being a resource for academic advising all the way through the mentorship that kind of, it sounds like, naturally builds up?
Yeah, sure. I think, every faculty member is a academic advisor. So the biology students have biology faculty as their academic advisors. And we really try to get to know the students. We really try to talk about what are the things that excite you, what motivates you, what are your aspirations, what things, do you enjoy, and trying to figure out. So there's this quite a big push of trying to get students to figure out for themselves as they go through their coursework and their experiences in 4 years, what are the pieces that you start seeing connections with. And we try to talk about opportunities, like trying to find opportunities to really test these things out and see what you enjoy. I'll go back to a really ridiculous thing my mother told me, right? So my mother was really big on, she said, find what makes you happy, and try to pursue that, because that'll lead to a happy life. And, you figure our working lives, right? We're spending 8 hours a day with folks, right? And it's not my family, but it is my family. Like, one of the things I would say I love about Colby-Sawyer is I love my colleagues, and I truly enjoy working with 18 to 22-year-olds or people just coming back to college to figure out the next step in their life. And it's an awesome transformational time. And there's not a lot of people who know exactly what they're going to do from start one, and that's okay. And it's this thing of just building information and experiences and saying, that was really cool. I like this. I never knew psychology was that. Well, take another psychology class. Who knows? Maybe your science and your biology major, psychology minor, and you end up being a clinical psychologist that helps hundreds of people, in their lives. So I don't know where your path leads, but I think our advising role is really trying to work with the student to try to recognize their strengths and things that make them happy, and will, I think, make them find ways that they feel like they can contribute to society, make a difference. So I think our advising role is one of building relationships with the students, and then trying to help them talk through and find opportunities and experiences that help build their pathway, I guess.
That's great. Thank you.
I'm trying to think of how to word that, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we meet with students every semester at least once, and the other thing I would say is, Ryan pointed out, we are a small school. We are small, right? And what we do, so that comes with some really great advantages and maybe some disadvantages. And I would say some of the great advantages are, we know all our students. If you're taking science with Nick, you're probably taking chemistry with the chemistry faculty, and we actually talk and we see each other and say, hey, how's Aiden doing in this class, and how's he doing in your class? And we'll talk, and oh, he's doing great. That's awesome, right? And if somebody's not doing as well, we may have a conversation. Oh, I got a chance to talk to your chemistry professor. How are things going, right? Are you seeking out help, or is there something I can help with? And so I think you are a name. You're not a number, and we really try to get to know our students. I would say along those lines, we have a lot of resources on campus. Our students that do really well in our classes, often their junior or senior year, are tutors for the class. So you have student resource, you have me, all our faculty, our doors. Well, in the Zoom world, it's funny. I literally have to close the door for the Zoom conversation, but our doors are always open. Normally, because if our doors open, we want people to come in and talk with us if they have questions. I would say your faculty are your best resource. You should not, I always tell people, we're here for the student. So you should feel comfortable coming, knocking on our door, saying, hey, do you have a minute? I have a question. And then we have the Student Learning Collaborative, so student tutors as well. We have a writing center. If writing's not your strength, we have writing professionals that help work with you on developing your writing skills, so that by the time you're a senior here, you may be working at the writing center. And then my favorite story is one of my students, Steph. She was not a strong writer coming in, and she'll tell you, she goes, I was the worst writer coming into college. But through her 4 years, by the time she was a senior, she was actually a tutor at the writing center. Her writing was so strong. And so that is the expected trajectory, right? We don't expect people coming in as super strong in all these skills. We're developing them over 4 years. And by the time you're done, the hope is that you're really feeling strong and confident about your skill set you've built here. And so, the advising is part of it, but it's not just your faculty mentor. You have mentors and advisors in different parts. It could be the writing center. It could be the student learning collaborative. It could be seniors. We have students coming in who work with seniors on their capstone. So you have an opportunity to work with students too. So I don't know, the mentoring and advising kind of goes in, there's multiple levels. It's not just your faculty.
Definitely. I think it's that spin on the phrase of it takes a village. It takes a campus.
Yeah.
Really, the one thing we haven't had a chance to, I think, cover in depth is looking at what type of opportunities are there for internships. You mentioned every student's required to take an internship before they graduate. What are some examples of internships for students looking at any of the programs we're talking about today?
Yeah, awesome. So there are internship opportunities both in-house, like within Colby-Sawyer, or, depending on students' interest, we try to help foster those opportunities. So what I mean by that is, you are interested in pre-med, so you may do a shadowing opportunity with doctors, right? And so we do have one of our students years ago set up, a few years back now, she set up this really cool collaboration with folks up at Dartmouth, where you can sign up for a medical internship or medical doctor shadowing up at Dartmouth, which is pretty cool. We have other students who work at vet clinics if they're interested in veterinary science. We have other students who do work with foresters or conservation groups if they're interested in conservation biology. If environmental science is your interest, we have everything from, there's a nature center in town. They have they have a naturalist every summer, and many of our students have been the naturalist there, where they're their own boss, but they set up the science curriculum there. They set up guest speakers, and then they every week set up weekly lesson plans and work on science education, which is great. I'm trying to think. The span is so broad. There are, the Embry, again, has internships that we do. We have faculty. So I have had students work for me and do internship projects on my research. Faculty have the same thing that students will do.
We could also look at this in the sense of maybe what are some of the outcomes, maybe either if they're directly linked to the internships, but have we ever seen a student go from their internship into a future career, or what are
Sure.
some of the like examples
Yeah.
of future careers they go into?
Sure. Okay. So, well, yeah. So I would say we have students who are interested in pre-med or pre-vet. They're applying to vet school or med school out of here, or they're taking a year to work in a clinic and then apply. I would say it's mostly for those two programs. But we have, an environmental science student this year. She has this really cool internship where it's the natural resources conservation services. It's part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the NRCS is in every state, and they're providing science expertise in water, agriculture, forestry. And so she's in our environmental science program. She got a paid internship this summer working for NRCS, and that internship guarantees her a job when she graduates. So it's kind of a really cool trajectory for her. And so she's going to be working up in Vermont, Middlebury at their office. And then next year when she graduates, she'll work, and they have offices all over the country. So she has an opportunity to be all over the place. We've had folks who've done internships through the state, and we now have students who are conservation officers, work for the Department of Transportation doing environmental impact statements if they're interested in the environmental science side of things. We've had students work in consulting groups and then go on and work for them afterwards. I'm trying to think of other people who are interested in dental school, have worked or shadowed in dental programs and done some volunteer work at hospitals and then applied to dental school or medical school. There's a World Health group here. We've had students do internships there and then apply, going into graduate school. So it's highly varied, but all of them we try to link to students' interests and then try to help bring those experiences to be something they highlight when they're applying to graduate programs or to their job. The other thing I wanted to briefly mention, besides internships that we didn't touch on, is there are field course opportunities here at Colby-Sawyer. We do try to program in all of our programs the opportunity for students to study away, whether that's a study abroad program, whether that's a opportunity at a different institution for a semester. But we do try to program that in the curriculum, so there is that time. And if that isn't in the cards, or that's not something that's interest, we do have field courses here at Colby-Sawyer as well that you can take during your semester. So let's see, in the fall, this semester, coming fall 2021, there is a Alpine Communities course that students will, right before the semester starts, will go up in the White Mountains and do a whole bunch of camping, go up to Baxter State Park in Maine and check out the mountains of New Hampshire and Maine and meet with people who are using the resource, managing the resource, recreating there, looking at indigenous peoples of the area and the history and culture of mountain communities, and then natural resources and alpine communities. So that's kind of a fun piece. And when we get back together during the semester, we meet once every week in the evenings to do readings and talk about this and sort of chew on these topics. The other one that's happening this fall is what's called tropical communities. And one of our faculty, Cherie Whipple, will be taking students down to Belize over the January term. But before that, they meet once a week, right, during the semester, and they do readings and get their head around tropical communities and the biology down there and threats to biodiversity and all these things. And then they go down for 10 days and they explore Belize and they have an awesome time. In the spring, we go out to Colorado and Utah. There's another trip out to Arizona. And there's another trip to the coastal area, to marine communities. Go and check out islands and look at how that's been influenced through history and through development. And so those are in-house things that students can sign up for any semester and take. So we try to have opportunities for people to study away or just take opportunities here to do little excursions with students from Colby-Sawyer.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. I didn't even think to ask about that. I think one of the things, maybe this is my favorite question to close our sessions with for our Meet the Faculty series, is as you look back on your career here at Colby-Sawyer, what's been your favorite teaching moment?
The fave?
Yeah, if you had to pick one.
Question. All right. Favorite teaching moment. I mean, I get pretty jazzed about taking students out in the field. And so I do that in a lot of courses. And you're really putting me on the spot because I don't know that I can pinpoint a fave. I like to get students play, and I honestly believe it's playing in science. Okay, so for me, it's a real privilege to be able to work with students and get them excited, or at least show them I'm pretty excited about it, about trying to ask interesting questions about our natural world. And then taking a whole bunch of measurements. I'm a data geek. So you measure a bunch of things and then we analyze it and chew on it and ask, what does that mean? What other questions might we come up with? So that's a pretty fave moment for me. I mean, I'm also biased. I love taking students on these field courses. I absolutely love it. And then, I do other things. We make maple syrup on campus. So we're finishing up that class right now. And I love seeing students running around campus with me, collecting sap and sitting in a sugar house, watching water boil to make maple syrup, and then just having time with students to talk about their lives and what gets them excited. And so I don't know, that's not one answer. I like a lot of the interactions with students and doing stuff is, I guess I would say.
I think that's a great answer. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for joining us and for your time and answering questions. Everybody that joined us, thank you so much for joining us and hearing more about our biology program, our environmental science and environmental studies programs. We really appreciate it. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, y'all. Pleasure talking.